Hello everybody, we are here today and we're doing a preview for the Saskatchewan Roughriders for the 2023 season. But before we start, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me. If not, no big deal. Now, let's get into it. So the first talking point here is whether or not the old guys still have it. And, some of these guys that I'll be talking about aren't crazy old, but they've been around in the league for a minute. The Roughriders ended up having some offseason losses like every team does, but they brought in some talent that was a little bit older. You look at Trevor Harris, they brought him in. He is in his mid-30s. You have Darrell Walker. He is also a guy that's been around in the CFL for a little bit. And Jake Wieneke, he is 28, so that is, again, getting closer to that 30 mark where you say that they're old. But I'm curious to see if they really are capable of providing, that level of talent that's needed to turn Saskatchewan around after a 6-12 season. A guy like Trevor Harris is probably a player you would say, despite the fact that he's inching closer to 40, is still a starting caliber quarterback in the league. And he will probably have to play really well, I think, in order to get this team off to the right start, because they were just a dumpster fire towards the last, really more than last half of the season. But he is a person that could instill confidence and really just say, I've been there, I've done that, let's do this way, let's, talk about film this way, and let's go out there and let's do certain things here and there where I think it could be a benefit for the guys. Now, Walker is a player that I'm really hoping can turn things around, but he's been kind of quiet. He was a lot better in his younger years. You do wonder how the cancellation in 2020 affected some things. He came back, and he just hasn't looked the same. Now, I will say part of that is tied to the the Elks not really having great consistent play. So you do wonder if maybe he was on a better team. Say if Trevor Harris is still capable of being a really good quarterback, that maybe his stats will be better. But I would really like to say that he's still got plenty of good play left of him and not say that his better days are behind him. Now, Wieneke is someone who had 11 touchdowns in 14 games last year. And not last year, 2022, before fading and just being really quiet for big stretches of this past season. I don't know if he's going to be able to get back to that 2021 in previous form, but I'm hopeful because he was a guy that was just really a big name receiver, and I still think is. But if he has another bad year as he inches closer to 30, people wonder maybe if he's lost his step and he's going to be a reliable guy. But one of these guys I think is especially more important than the other two. Probably can guess who that is, but you still would like those other two to play well. The good news is, though, is you look at this, Walker and Wieneke probably in the receiving core don't have to play the true number one receiver role as Kean Schaefer-Baker is there. And I know that he'll probably miss part of the season, but if he's healthy and comes back at some point, as long as it's still with plenty left to play, you'd feel good about. The second talking point here is Kelly Jeffrey ready to be the offensive coordinator? Jeffrey has multiple years of coaching in the CFL. He's coached for Saskatchewan, Edmonton, and Toronto, and also has plenty of experience being a head coach too. He coached Mount Allison from 2008 to 2015. They were pretty good in that time. I think 2013 through 2015 were their best years, so he does have that experience. He takes over a Roughriders team that finished 7th in the league for points per game last year, ran the ball pretty well, wasn't able to run the ball as much as they probably would have liked, though. They had one of the higher league averages for yards per carry in the league, but in terms of carry attempts, they finished towards the bottom of the league there too, probably, again, tied to some of the scores that they were in where they had to become more one-dimensional. But it does seem like he's in a good spot and he's liked by his players. Jamal Morrow, if I'm not mistaken, actually kind of supported him and actually pushed for him to be the offensive coordinator, or said that he would really appreciate if he was. That's good too, because you look at any guy that is a coach, if a player says, I think he's the right fit and I want him to take a step up for this team, that's probably a good thing. Not necessarily saying that a player is always right, or the player should have a decision, but Morrow was able to have a really good year last year with Jeffrey being the running back coach, and you also have Frankie Hickson. Hickson's still there, I believe. I didn't see anything suggesting otherwise, but that's two really good running backs right there, and they are guys that could have, again, really good seasons. Now, the good news is, too, that there are more pieces to work with this year that you're feeling hopeful for, and you get to kind of, tweak some things around compared to last season. The bad news is you really have to figure out, is that offensive line bad, or is it just partially because Cody Fajardo likes to step out of the pocket. He likes to extend plays with his legs, and sometimes he ended up getting wrapped up outside of the tackles. That's going to be something you get to see here, or is it going to be the fact, well, now you've got Trevor Harris, who isn't as fast as Cody Fajardo, and he is going to be eaten alive. I do think it's one of those situations that's not going to be as big of a deal. You have Winicky and Kean Shaver-Baker, too, that I imagine would be kind of those safety nets as receivers, and they might try to run the ball a little bit more if they're in a better position than last year. So I don't expect Harris to be sacked, at an alarming rate like the other Rough Riders quarterbacks were last season, but it does bring to mind, is Jeffrey ready, and how does he handle some of that adversity if some things fall apart? Say that the receivers aren't as good as they need to be, or the offensive line is terrible. Whatever the case is, I'm excited to see whether or not he's ready. The third talking point here is, can this team handle this daunting schedule they have? They have a really rough schedule compared to some other teams, I believe, and a lot of it ties into divisional play. They've got a lot of games against Winnipeg. They've got a lot of games against Calgary. They've got, of course, some games against BC and some other teams too. They play Hamilton at least once this year. I look at this schedule, and at the beginning I say that's when they really have to make a push. They have to strike, because that's when I think they have some more winnable games. But once you get towards the middle part of that season and you start to see those games against Winnipeg, those could be some games where you're not really feeling confident that they could win. They have a game, I think, around the middle part with Hamilton too. If you start stringing together losses, that's a great way to not make the playoffs this year. I really want to see how they do early on when they are in a better spot to win, hypothetically, because if they struggle then, and then you start to see some of those other games, you say, wow, this could get really ugly fast. And for them, they really need to win probably, close to 2/5 of those types of games, and then take advantage of some other teams that are expected to be bad. But the reality is, too, those teams might not be as bad as years past. So I think it could be harder to win compared to a few years ago when, say, a team like Edmonton was pretty rough, when a team like Toronto was kind of bad, when a team like Ottawa was pretty bad. I don't feel like this year there's a lot of easy give-me's, but we will see, because some teams tend to be worse than what you expect. Some teams tend to be better. Saskatchewan's in a spot right now, though, where they know that a team like Winnipeg is probably not going to be a team that they end up taking out for a higher spot in the division, which makes the question, what exactly is going to happen here? My final thoughts for Saskatchewan is the fact that I think that they're a must-watch team this year. Whether or not they're good or bad, there's going to be a lot of headlines surrounding this team, because they have the potential to grab a lot of headlines. They have such a big fan base. This is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, CFL fan base, and they are a group that's pretty passionate about what this team's been able to do. They deserve a better season than what they saw last year, considering that they hosted the Grey Cup and they didn't even get to make it to the playoffs. Right now, I'm looking at this club too. I think the offense has the ability to be better. I know the whole Moss thing didn't work out exactly with Fajardo. I don't exactly think Fajardo is to blame there for everything. I guess you could say maybe Moss isn't to blame for everything too, but I guess we'll see in Montreal how some things work out. But the offense should probably be a little bit better. Maybe they don't turn the ball over as much. Maybe they don't take as many sacks. Even if it's just better field position for their defense to work with, that's going to be great for them. And I think the defense could be better too, just because the fact that they've got such a really good defensive line, and they have the ability to just kind of go on from here and say, we've got a lot of motivation and we should be better than what we were last year. So that's good. The bad news is they did lose Darnell Sankey after he set a tackle record for them, and they're going to make him the second highest paid linebacker in the league, I believe. He ended up leaving to go to the XFL. That one hurt, especially as a CFL fan, just to see a guy like him that just set a record and was going to get pretty significant money leave. That's the reality of the situation, though. But also, too, the pressure is on Coach Dickinson, as Rough Riders fans have expected good football play over the past, good long while. They are not the bad teams of decades past. They are a team that's been in Grey Cups pretty regularly in my lifetime. And at the very least, they've been a team that's in the hunt for the playoffs pretty long. And so if they slide hard, I could expect some changes to be made pretty quick. We will see, though. While they really are in a spot right now where it's not exactly known where they're going to be, the question becomes, are they playoff good? I'm going to say that I'm shying away from that now. It's probably going to have to be as a crossover team, and I need to see a little bit more from the Rough Riders to start out the year for me to be able to buy back into this club after really being a big proponent of them being good last year. So we'll see. What are your thoughts on the Saskatchewan Rough Riders, though? Do you think they'll be a good team this year? Do you think that they'll be a bad team? Do you think they'll be a mediocre team, say like 8-10, 9-9, something like that? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe and have a great night.